While soldiers fought on the front lines, another battle was waged at home. Inside the kitchen, with ration books instead of rifles, families stretched every crumb, turned scraps into suppers, and made victory gardens grow where luxuries once stood. Every meal was more than food. It was sacrifice, ingenuity, and hope served on a plate. These are 25 forgotten recipes that built a nation, one humble bite at a time. National Loaf. The National Loaf was more than bread. It was a quiet act of defiance, a daily ration of resilience. Imagine it, a grayish, sturdy loaf, dense and heavy in the hand. The same slice landing on every kitchen table in Britain. It was not luxury but survival. Not indulgence, but endurance. This was the bread that built a nation. Introduced in 1942, the National Loaf was born of necessity. White flour, so beloved before the war, was wasteful to produce. Ships crossing the Atlantic carried weapons and soldiers, not fine wheat. The Ministry of Food ordered millers to grind flour at 85% extraction, keeping more of the husk, the bran, the very bones of the grain. The result? Bread that was darker, coarser, tougher on the teeth, but richer in vitamins. Good for the nation, they said. Families grumbled, but they ate it all the same for the war effort, for survival, for the children who needed to grow strong. Close your eyes and step into that 1940s kitchen. You hear the serrated knife sawing through the firm, pale loaf, the crust flaking with a soft crackle. You see the dense crumb, speckled with flecks of bran, a far cry from the snow-white softness of pre-war days. Toasted over the fire and suddenly the smell changes, warm, nutty, roasted grain rising into the air like a comfort blanket. Spread it with drippings saved from Sunday's roast, and the saltiness clings to your lips. Or maybe a thin smear of carrot jam, its earthy sweetness seeping into every pore of the bread. It wasn't glamorous. Children often turned up their noses at its coarse texture, longing for fluffy white slices. Yet hunger is a powerful teacher, and soon the loaf became as familiar as the air raid sirens and blackout curtains. Mothers packed it into lunch tins, fathers dunked it into bowls of watery broth, and neighbors broke it together at church suppers. Everyone ate the same bread, dukes and dock workers, teachers and tailors. In its plainness, the loaf united them all. I can still see my grandmother wrapping her loaf in a clean cloth, placing it gently on the shelf like it was treasure. She would smile and say, "This bread kept us going." And she was right. It was more than food. It was proof that the nation could endure scarcity with dignity. The National Loaf was an edible weapon, a slice of democracy, a daily act of patience and perseverance. In every thick, chewy bite was a promise. We will not be broken. Victory Porridge. More than a breakfast, victory porridge was a morning ritual of endurance. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't indulgent, but it was filling, reliable, and patriotic. A steaming bowl of oats was the quiet fuel that sent children to school, men to factories, and women to the endless work of the home front. It was quick, it was affordable, and it was for the war effort. Milk was scarce, sugar even scarcer, yet oats could stretch. They were hearty, humble, and available in bulk, often arriving in sacks with the promise of strength. Housewives learned to make do by thinning the porridge with water, or by stirring in a few spoonfuls of powdered milk when the tin allowed. Sweetness came not from heaping sugar, but from whatever could be spared: a drizzle of golden syrup, a spoonful of carrot jam, or a scattering of dried currants saved from Christmas. Can you see it? The porridge bubbling thickly in a dented saucepan, the steam curling upward with a faintly nutty aroma. You hear the slow plop as it's ladled into chipped bowls, the scrape of spoons against enamel as hungry mouths wait. The texture was simple, soft, and creamy when stirred long enough, sometimes lumpy and stubborn if rushed. It clung to the spoon like glue, but in that stickiness lay strength. One bite brought warmth that spread through your chest, earthy oats carrying a sweetness as subtle as hope. For children, porridge was often the first meal of the day and the first lesson in wartime patience. No sugar mountains, no rivers of cream, just a steady, honest bowl. Mothers coaxed them with words. "It will make you strong, it will put hair on your chest, eat up, it's good for you." And in truth, it was this simple dish carried vitamins, fiber, and a kind of invisible courage. A child who ate porridge could endure the walk to school, the chill of winter mornings, the gnawing uncertainty of sirens in the night. I can still picture my grandmother carefully stirring the pot, adding an extra splash of water to stretch it just one bowl further. She would smile softly as we ate, as though that humble porridge was a feast, And in its way, it was. Victory porridge was not just breakfast. It was fortification. A spoonful of resilience, a daily reminder that even in times of scarcity, the nation could endure. Potato scones. More than a side dish, potato scones were a morning anthem of thrift and tenderness. Imagine waking to the smell of frying on a cold wartime morning, the sizzle of leftover mash hitting a hot pan, the golden brown edges crisping like sunshine breaking through clouds. These weren't just scones, they were edible reminders that nothing went to waste. Not even yesterday's potatoes. Why potato scones? Because potatoes were plentiful. The Ministry of Food encouraged families to plant them in every scrap of earth, backyards. Allotments, even bomb craters turned into little victory gardens. While butter and flour were rationed, potatoes kept growing, dependable as clockwork. Housewives learned to fold the mashed spuds into dough, stretching their flour farther and turning yesterday's leftovers into today's breakfast. It was make do and mend, served hot on a plate. Picture the scene. A woman kneeling by her stove, apron tied tight, patting out rounds of dough with hands dusted in flour. The mixture is simple: mashed potato, a little flour, perhaps a pinch of baking powder if she can spare it. The dough is soft, pale, and pliable. Yielding under her palms, onto the hot griddle or frying pan it goes, and suddenly you hear it. The faint hiss, the bubbling whisper of fat as it kisses the pan. Slowly the edges brown and blister, releasing an aroma that's both toasty and earthy. A smell that fills the kitchen with promise. Bite into one, and you taste it all. The crisp edge giving way to a tender, moist crumb inside. The earthy sweetness of potato mingling with the faint saltiness of margarine or dripping brushed on top. It wasn't flaky like a bakery scone, but dense, nourishing, substantial. Some sprinkled it with a little sugar, others ate it plain, and a lucky few spread it with a dab of jam. Each variation was a small joy, a way of turning scarcity into abundance. And who ate these potato scones? Everyone. Children grabbed them warm from the pan before heading to school. Fathers tucked them into their pockets for lunch at the factory. Neighbors shared them at church teas when flour was too scarce for cakes. I can still see my grandmother stacking them on a chipped plate, steam rising in delicate curls, urging us to eat while they're hot. Her eyes carried both weariness and pride, because she knew each scone wasn't just breakfast. It was proof she could stretch her rations one more day. Potato scones were more than a clever recipe. They were resilience pressed flat, browned, golden, and served warm. A simple dish, yes, but in those years of want they were nothing less than small, daily victories. Powdered egg scramble. Powdered egg scramble was a quiet marvel of wartime ingenuity, a way to enjoy the familiar comfort of eggs, even when rations made fresh ones a rare treat. It was a staple that spoke of necessity turned into resourcefulness, a dish that nourished both body and spirit while demonstrating the subtle artistry of the home front. With powdered eggs stored carefully in airtight tins, a dash of milk and a smidge of butter or margarine, mothers could summon a warm, protein-rich breakfast in minutes, turning scarcity into sustenance. The preparation was simple yet poetic. The powder, pale and fine as winter snow, was whisked into milk until smooth, a thick, creamy mixture that promised warmth and nourishment. When poured into a lightly greased pan, the mixture hissed and sizzled softly, the faint aroma of cooked egg mingling with the earthy scent of butter. Gentle folds coaxed the scramble into fluffy waves, each turn creating a texture that was light, tender, and comforting, like a soft morning cloud cradling the day ahead. The golden curds emerged with a subtle sheen, glistening with the warmth of the pan and the labor of careful hands. The first bite was a study in quiet satisfaction. Moist and tender, the scramble carried a gentle richness, the slight sweetness of the milk balancing the subtle savoriness of the eggs. There was a resilience in the texture, a firmness that spoke of nourishment earned through patience and care. Even without fresh eggs, the dish offered the warmth of familiarity, the sense of a ritual completed, a bowl of sustenance that whispered of mornings at home, of kitchens where determination and creativity turned humble ingredients into delight. Powdered egg scramble held more than flavor. It carried the pride and ingenuity of those who prepared it. Mothers and grandmothers mastered the delicate balance of powder, milk, and heat, ensuring each portion was tender, each meal filling. Children rose to the smell of sizzling eggs, their small faces bright with anticipation. It was a dish that demonstrated ingenuity and practice, a simple, modest preparation that fed families, preserved energy, and allowed the spirit to thrive alongside the body. This scramble was never just about breakfast. It was resilience in action, a testament to cleverness and devotion, and a reminder that even the most limited ingredients could be transformed into warmth, nourishment, and comfort. Every forkful spoke of care, patience, and quiet heroism. A subtle yet profound act of love that built a nation one modest meal at a time. Woolton Pie. Woolton Pie was more than a vegetable casserole. It was a symbol of wartime resilience, a humble creation born from rationing and the ingenuity of the home front. Named after Frederick Woolton, Britain's Minister of Food, it was designed to nourish the nation while stretching limited ingredients, turning simple vegetables into a satisfying, comforting centerpiece. Carrots, parsnips, turnips, and potatoes, all sourced from gardens, allotments, or the modest markets, came together under a golden, flaky crust, creating a pie that carried both sustenance and pride. The preparation was an exercise in care and creativity. Root vegetables were peeled and chopped into tender, even pieces, releasing earthy fragrances as they boiled or steamed. The aroma of onions softened in a pan of rationed margarine mingled with the faint, sweet scent of parsnips and the subtle starchiness of potatoes. A sprinkle of herbs, perhaps thyme or parsley, brightened the mixture, while a touch of stock made from whatever scraps could be spared bound the flavors into a thick, savory filling. Once tucked under a pastry crust, the pie baked in the oven, the edges turning a warm golden brown, the kitchen filling with a rich, homey aroma that seemed to whisper, comfort can be found even in austerity. The first slice revealed the careful craftsmanship within. The crust gave way with a satisfying crispness, breaking to reveal the dense, hearty filling beneath. Sweetness and earthiness mingled in each bite, the tender vegetables infused with the subtle warmth of butter and herbs. Every forkful carried both flavor and nourishment, offering the satisfaction of a full meal despite the restrictions of rationing. Woolton Pie was proof that ingenuity could transform simplicity into delight, that even a dish of humble roots could provide a feast for both body and spirit. It was a dish that reflected the courage and resourcefulness of those who prepared it. Housewives and mothers, adept at stretching every available ingredient, transformed gardens and pantries into sources of sustenance, creating meals that fed families and bolstered morale. Each pie, carefully constructed and lovingly baked, carried the quiet dignity of the generation that faced scarcity with grace. It stood as a testament to practical creativity and devotion, a dish that nourished the nation and demonstrated that even in the leanest of times, care, patience, and love could shine through. Woolton Pie was never just a vegetable dish. It was resilience wrapped in pastry, ingenuity served warm, and a tribute to the kitchen commandos who helped build a nation one hearty golden slice at a time. Victory Vegetable Loaf. More than just a meatloaf, the Victory Vegetable Loaf was a tribute to ingenuity and resilience, a way to fill stomachs and hearts alike during lean wartime days. In an era when beef was rationed and every ounce of protein counted, clever cooks turned to humble carrots, hearty oats, and pungent onions to create a loaf that could stretch across the table, sustaining families while whispering defiance to scarcity. As you mix the grated carrots with oats and softened onions, the earthy sweetness of the vegetables rises up, mingling with the nutty aroma of rolled oats, promising comfort even in austere times. The preparation itself was a ritual, a careful choreography of stirring, pressing, and seasoning. You feel the cool, damp mixture in your hands as you shape it into a loaf, pressing lightly yet firmly, knowing each squeeze carries purpose. The oven transforms the humble ingredients, browning the exterior to a warm golden brown crust while the interior remains tender, almost melting with moisture. The scent that fills the kitchen is both grounding and uplifting, the sharp tang of onions softened by gentle heat, the deep vegetal sweetness of carrots, the faint nuttiness of oats toasted by warmth. Every moment of cooking, every sizzle and hiss, is a reminder that sustenance can also be a quiet act of patriotism. Eating the Victory Vegetable Loaf is a sensory revelation. You cut through the crust with a satisfying resistance, revealing the pale, hearty interior that holds together just enough to slice neatly. Each bite is dense yet yielding the earthy sweetness of carrots balanced by the gentle bite of oats and the caramelized edge of onion. It is filling, yes, but it is also comforting, a taste that carries the labor, creativity, and pride of a generation that learned to make do and mend. With every chew, you are reminded that feeding a family in wartime was an act of love, a small, edible weapon against scarcity, a testament to cleverness and care. This loaf was more than sustenance, it was the pride of kitchen commandos, mothers and aunts who transformed simple vegetables into symbols of hope. It brought neighbors and families together, shared at communal tables, or quietly enjoyed at home. Each slice a miniature victory. In the Victory Vegetable Loaf, you can taste the ingenuity, the patience, and the quiet dignity that define the home front. It was simple, it was necessary, and it was profoundly, unmistakably human. Mock goose. More than a mere Sunday roast, the mock goose was a testament to resourcefulness, shaped with care to echo the grandeur of a holiday bird. In a time when real goose was a luxury reserved for the few, families turned to humble lentils, breadcrumbs, and fragrant sage to create a centerpiece that could inspire awe and satisfy hunger alike. As you fold the earthy lentils into the golden breadcrumbs and sprinkle in crushed sage, the mixture begins to thicken, coming alive with an aroma both comforting and ceremonious, the very essence of a feast built on ingenuity. Forming the loaf into the silhouette of a goose is an intimate, almost reverent act. You press gently, coaxing the wings and neck into place, your fingers remembering the shapes of holiday meals past. The oven transforms the humble mass, crisping the exterior to a warm golden brown, while holding the interior tender, dense, and fragrant. As the loaf roasts, the scent of sage mingles with the toasted breadcrumbs, earthy lentils, and a hint of hidden vegetables, filling the kitchen with a celebratory perfume that promises both sustenance and pride. You feel a quiet triumph as the edges caramelize, a subtle crunch giving way to a soft, hearty crumb beneath. When you slice the mock goose, the beauty of ingenuity is revealed. The rich, nutty flavor of lentils, harmonizing with the savory depth of sage, the breadcrumbs adding gentle texture, the subtle moisture of hidden vegetables, lending an unspoken tenderness. Each bite carries more than flavor. It carries history, a memory of kitchens where rationing was not deprivation, but a canvas for creativity. You taste the quiet heroism of cooks who turned scarcity into abundance, who built a sense of occasion from what was available, who made every meal a declaration of love and resilience. The mock goose was more than a dish. It was an edible symbol of the home front, a way to honor tradition even when the table was sparse. It brought families together, celebrating ingenuity with every careful slice, turning lentils and breadcrumbs into a loaf that was majestic in appearance, comforting in aroma, and unforgettable in flavor. You savor it and are reminded that in every kitchen, in every hand that shaped it, there was courage, care, and a quiet triumph over adversity. It was simple, patriotic, and profoundly human. Stretched sausage rolls. More than a simple snack, stretched sausage rolls were a triumph of cleverness and care, transforming a few precious sausages into enough to feed a family. In a time when meat was rationed and every ounce counted, you would bulk up the filling with breadcrumbs, oats, and even the humble grated potato, creating a hearty mixture that sizzled with ingenuity. As you press your fingers into the dough, rolling it around the seasoned, expanded filling, the kitchen begins to hum with purpose and the faint aroma of sage, pepper, and cooking pastry. The oven works its magic, turning pale pastry into a golden brown promise of comfort. You hear the gentle crackle as the rolls bake, a rhythmic sound that seems to echo the determination of the era itself. Steam rises from each end, carrying with it the earthy scent of oats, the subtle sweetness of potato, and the savory richness of sausage, all mingling into an aroma that feels like home, like safety, like a small victory in a world stretched thin. You brush the tops with a little water or milk, watching them gleam with a fragile sheen, a whisper of luxury in austere times. Biting into a stretched sausage roll is a lesson in resilience. The pastry yields with a satisfying crunch, giving way to a dense, moist interior where breadcrumbs and grated potato meld with the savory sausage, each mouthful a mosaic of textures and flavors. You taste the subtle sweetness of the oats, the comforting saltiness of meat, and the whisper of hers, a reminder that even in rationing, kitchens could craft moments of pleasure. The rolls stretch not only the meat, but the imagination, turning scarcity into abundance, necessity into celebration. These rolls were more than sustenance. They were symbols of devotion and ingenuity, small acts of love for the war effort. You feel the hands that shaped them, the care in each roll lined on a tray, ready to nourish tired bodies and lift weary spirits. Every bite carries pride. Every aroma evokes memory, and every golden crust celebrates the creativity of those who cooked with heart and purpose. In the quiet of a wartime kitchen, the stretched sausage roll was simple, patriotic, and unforgettable, a humble testament to what could be built from a few rationed ingredients and a lot of love. Fish cakes of necessity. More than a humble meal, fish cakes of necessity were a quiet triumph of resourcefulness and love. Salt fish or tin pilchards, often the only available sources of protein, were mashed together with soft, steaming potatoes, a simple union that promised sustenance and comfort. You could feel the warmth rising from the bowl, As you press the mixture together, the earthy scent of potato mingling with the briny tang of fish, a reminder that even in ration times, flavor and nourishment could coexist. You shape the patties carefully, fingers pressing edges until each one holds firm, and then place them in a hot, buttered pan. The sizzle greets you like an old friend, sending up curls of steam that carry the salty sweet aroma across the kitchen. You watch the crust deepen to a golden brown, a satisfying visual proof that scarcity can be transformed into pride. Each patty crackles faintly as it cooks, promising a crisp exterior that yields to a tender, flavorful heart, a texture that tells a story of ingenuity, patience, and the quiet determination of the home front. Eating a fish cake of necessity is a sensory revelation. The first bite gives way to a harmony of tastes: the subtle, oceanic salt of pilchard, the creamy comfort of mashed potato, and the whisper of pepper or a pinch of herbs gathered from a victory garden. You feel the dense yet yielding crumb under your teeth, the faint crunch of browned edges, the warmth spreading with each mouthful. It was more than a meal, it was an edible act of love and resilience, a way to stretch scarce ingredients without sacrificing nourishment or morale. These cakes carried the weight of a generation's ingenuity. You sense the hands that shaped them, the care in every patty laid upon the pan, ready to sustain tired bodies and lift spirits during long rationed weeks. Each golden cake is a symbol of sacrifice and pride, a small victory in a time of hardship. In the quiet clatter of a wartime kitchen, the fish cake of necessity stood as a testament to what could be built from the humblest ingredients, a comforting bite of history, creativity, and unyielding love for family and nation alike. Carrot soup. Carrot soup was more than a simple warming dish. It was a bright, sweet beacon of comfort in a time when every penny and every vegetable counted. Those long ration days demanded ingenuity, and carrots plentiful in victory gardens and local allotments became the hero of countless kitchens. You hold a handful of the orange roots, their earthy aroma mingling with the faint scent of freshly turned soil, and realize that these humble vegetables carried more than flavor. They carried hope. In your pot, water meets peeled, chopped carrots, and you add a pinch of salt and a whisper of onion, if you're lucky. The soup begins to bubble softly, a gentle symphony of simmering life, sending up wisps of fragrant steam that warm your face and soul alike. The bright golden orange hue deepens with each passing minute, glowing like a promise in wartime kitchens, while the sweet, earthy scent of carrot curls around your senses. You stir slowly, listening to the quiet murmur of cooking, the gentle swish and pop, knowing that this simple act of preparation is an unspoken contribution to the war effort. The first spoonful is an embrace, smooth, velvety, carrying the natural sweetness of the carrot, subtly enriched by the savory whisper of onion and the faintest drizzle of fat saved from other meals. The texture is both soft and comforting, a gentle reminder that nourishment can be humble yet profound. Each mouthful stretches further than the pot it came from, feeding bodies and spirits alike, a testament to the cleverness and determination of those who made do and mended with what they had. Carrot soup was often ladled out in schools and communal kitchens, but in your own kitchen, it became a quiet act of devotion. You sensed the hands that chopped and stirred, the care with which ingredients were measured and rationed, the pride in producing a dish that sustained and delighted despite scarcity. It was quick, affordable, and patriotic, a small, orange miracle built from simple ingredients, a culinary ode to resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet courage of the home front. Each steaming bowl was more than soup. It was a symbol, a comforting companion, and a subtle celebration of life, hope, and shared sacrifice. Barley bone broth. Barley bone broth was more than a soup. It was a quiet, simmering testament to ingenuity and care. In an era when meat was a rare treasure, bones salvaged from Sunday roasts were transformed into liquid gold, simmered slowly to coax every last ounce of flavor. You watch as the water swirls around marrow-studded bones, the faint crackle and hiss of simmering filling the kitchen like a lullaby for resilience. Barley, cheap and filling, mingles with diced root vegetables, adding body where meat is absent, turning scarcity into sustenance. As the broth simmers, the aroma unfurls in waves. Nutty barley, earthy carrots, sweetened by onion, deepened by herbs that were often homegrown or bartered from neighbors. You stir the pot gently, lifting the lid just enough to catch a glimpse of the golden brown liquid, steam curling like whispers of the family who depend on it. The slow sizzle of vegetables and grains against the sides of the pot reminds you that nourishment can be a meditation, that care itself is an ingredient, and that something humble can become extraordinary when handled with love and ingenuity. When you ladle the finished broth into a bowl, it's a warm embrace. The taste is rich despite the absence of lavish meat, layered with the faintly sweet pull of carrot, the tender chew of barley, and the subtle grounding depth of slow-simmered bones. Each spoonful nourishes more than the body. It nourishes pride and perseverance. The texture is soothing, velvety, hearty, sustaining like the hands that stirred it day after day, transforming simple ingredients into acts of devotion for the war effort. Barley bone broth was a staple at home. In the school canteen and among neighbors who shared what little they had, you sensed the quiet dignity in every gesture. The careful scraping of marrow from a bone, the precise rationing of vegetables, the small triumphs of flavor crafted from scarcity. It was economical, practical, and patriotic, a liquid comfort that fortified both body and spirit. In every steaming bowl, you taste history, the whispered ingenuity of the home front, the triumph of resourcefulness, and the enduring warmth of those who fed a nation with courage, creativity, and a dash of hope. Potato peel soup. Potato peel soup was the very essence of resourcefulness, a humble act of love simmering in a pot, in a time when every morsel mattered. Not a single scrap of potato was wasted. You gather the peelings from the day's meals, the thin curls of skin, almost translucent yet brimming with quiet promise. Toss them into a simmering pot with a handful of onions, a few chopped carrots, and whatever herbs the victory garden has yielded. The water swirls and hisses gently, carrying the soft earthy perfume of potato and the faint sweetness of carrot, filling the kitchen with a comforting warmth that goes deeper than mere sustenance. As the soup cooks, the texture evolves. The peelings soften and thicken the broth, lending a silken body that belies its humble beginnings. You stir patiently, feeling the rhythm of the spoon against the pot, listening to the gentle sigh of steam rising like a hymn for perseverance. The aroma is an embrace, earthy and grounding, with the faintest whisper of herbs and the promise of nourishment that stretches a family meal further than you thought possible. A sprinkle of salt, a dash of pepper, small gestures that transform necessity into a quiet indulgence. When you finally ladle it into bowls, the soup glows a pale golden orange flecked with softened vegetables, the fragrance mingling with the warmth of the kitchen itself. Each sip offers a soft, earthy sweetness, the potatoes lending a creamy, filling mouthfeel, while barley or oats, if you've added them, provide a gentle chew that feels like sustenance woven into resilience. It is modest, yet comforting, a bowl full of dignity crafted from scarcity. Potato peel soup was the triumph of thriftiness. Served in homes, schools, and communal kitchens across the nation, you sense the care in each gesture, the mother scraping every last scrap, the children waiting eagerly for the first steaming spoonful, the shared pride in making do without complaint. It was affordable, practical, and patriotic, a reminder that even the simplest ingredients handled with ingenuity and love could fortify both body and spirit. In every steaming bowl, you taste the quiet heroism of the home front, the kitchen commandos who built a nation with creativity, courage, and an unwavering sense of care. Beetroot sandwiches. Beetroot sandwiches were more than a simple lunch. They were an ingenious answer to rationing, a crimson promise tucked between slices of humble bread. You peel and slice the deep ruby roots, their earthy aroma rising in a fragrant whisper as you work. The kitchen glows with the rich, almost jewel-like color of the beetroot, and you can feel the weight of history in each slice, knowing that this simple vegetable is filling in for the meat that was scarce. A smear of butter or margarine softens the tang, turning every bite into a tender, slightly sweet bite of sustenance. During the war, meat was a luxury, but the beetroot, with its bold color and earthy flavor, offered both comfort and a semblance of indulgence. You press the slices onto bread, layering carefully, mindful of making each sandwich look generous. The faint sweetness of the beet contrasts beautifully with the soft, pillowy bread, while the slight tang from vinegar or a touch of mustard, if you are lucky, adds a spark of flavor. As you bite into it, there's a gentle, satisfying resistance, a subtle crunch giving way to a velvety, almost creamy texture, carrying with it the taste of ingenuity and the triumph of make do and mend. These sandwiches were staples for children heading to school, for workers on lunch breaks, for mothers sending parcels to loved ones far from home. Each bite carried warmth, not just from the kitchen, but from the pride and care poured into stretching every rationed ingredient. You feel the human element, the mother carefully boiling the beetroot until tender, the father watching the clock before returning to duty, the children savoring the color and flavor as if it were a treat. It was simple, economical, and patriotic, a symbol of resilience baked into the ordinary rhythm of daily life. Beetroot sandwiches weren't just food. They were acts of love, edible weapons in the quiet battles of the home front, small but mighty symbols of the nation's heart and resourcefulness. Vegetable turnovers. Vegetable turnovers were more than pastry. They were a quiet triumph of creativity and resourcefulness. You roll out the dough, feeling its soft resistance under your fingers, and peek into your basket of garden bounty. Carrots, cabbage, leeks, or even a handful of peas, whatever the week has offered becomes the hidden treasure within each parcel. The kitchen hums with the aroma of warm butter or margarine meeting flour, a comforting, earthy scent that hints at the hearty flavors to come. Each turnover is a little folded secret, a promise of nourishment wrapped in golden brown crispness. During rationing, meat was rare, but the Victory Garden flourished. You chop, sauté, and season with a whisper of salt or a splash of milk to bind the filling, marveling at how simple vegetables can be transformed into something festive. As you fold the pastry over, sealing the edges with a careful pinch, the kitchen becomes a theater of subtle anticipation. Once baked, the turnovers emerge with a delicate crunch that gives way to a warm, steaming interior. The smell of roasted vegetables mingles with the caramelized scent of pastry, and when you bite into one, the flavors are layered and comforting. Sweet carrots, tender cabbage, and earthy leeks creating a quiet symphony on your tongue. The human element shines in these humble parcels. You can picture the mother, exhausted from long days, yet meticulously folding each turnover with care, thinking of how these small, hearty treats will feed and delight her family. Perhaps a neighbor swaps tips on stuffing techniques, a shared act of solidarity on the home front. Each bite is not merely sustenance. It is an act of love, a symbol of ingenuity, and a testament to the resilience of those who made do, stretching every ration morsel for the war effort. Vegetable turnovers were quick, affordable, and patriotic, small but potent reminders that even in scarcity, kitchens built a nation, one golden, fragrant parcel at a time. Carrot fritters. Carrot fritters were more than a simple snack. They were a testament to ingenuity and the sweet triumph of turning scarcity into delight. You take a humble grater and transform ordinary garden carrots into delicate orange threads, their earthy scent rising and mingling with the faint tang of milk and the whisper of flour. You shape them into small, proud patties, each one a tiny victory, ready to sizzle in a hot pan of margarine. The kitchen fills with the comforting, almost hypnotic aroma of frying vegetables, and you can almost hear the satisfying hiss that promises crisp edges and tender hearts. During the days of rationing, meat was precious and often absent from the table, but the carrot was abundant, a versatile gift from the Victory Garden. You grate season lightly with salt and perhaps a dash of pepper or a pinch of herbs, and fold in a handful of breadcrumbs to bind the mixture. As the fritters hit the pan, their edges curl and crisp, turning a golden orange, the scent deepening into something almost festive. When you lift one, it trembles slightly under the weight of your spoon, releasing a warm, sweet steam that fills your nostrils. You bite in, and the sweet, earthy carrot yields to a lightly crunchy crust. The flavor's simple but profound, a reminder that sustenance and love could be folded into one small, glorious patty. The human element is woven through every fritter. You can see the mother exhausted but resolute, frying batch after batch for her children, knowing that even in lean times she can gift them nourishment that feels luxurious. Perhaps she whispers encouragement to a neighbor, swapping recipes and secrets of seasoning, the community quietly sharing its collective ingenuity. Each fritter is not just food, it is an act of defiance, a symbol of resourcefulness, and a quiet celebration of resilience. Carrot fritters were quick, affordable, and patriotic, small orange discs that sizzled like hope on the griddle, sustaining both body and spirit for the war effort, and proving that even in scarcity, kitchens built a nation, one golden fragrant bite at a time. Cabbage Hotpot. Cabbage Hotpot was more than a layered casserole. It was a quiet triumph of economy, patience, and care. You take the pale green leaves of cabbage, crisp and fragrant, and the humble potatoes, earthy and firm, and you arrange them like a mosaic in a deep baking dish. Between these layers, you tuck the tiniest scrap of meat, perhaps a morsel of bacon or a leftover joint, its flavor poised to perfume the vegetables as the pot simmers. The kitchen fills with the heady, warming scent of slowly cooking cabbage, sweet potatoes, and the faint, smoky promise of meat. The bubbling sound from the oven is like a lullaby, a rhythm of sustenance and endurance. During wartime, meat was a luxury, and your ingenuity had to stretch it further than you thought possible. You slice potatoes thin, layer them thickly with cabbage, sprinkle with salt and perhaps a pinch of pepper, and nestle your precious scraps of meat among the vegetables. As it bakes, the cabbage wilts into tender folds. The potatoes absorb every hint of flavor, and the edges caramelize slightly, turning golden and inviting. When you lift the lid, steam bursts into the room, carrying a scent of home, resilience, and quiet victory. You take a spoon, scoop up a portion, and feel the weight of warmth and sustenance in your hand. Each bite is tender, subtly sweet, with a faint, distant echo of meat that seems far richer than its tiny presence should allow. The human element is inseparable from this dish. You can see the mother or grandmother, weary from a long day, carefully layering each vegetable, knowing that this hot pot must feed the family and satisfy the soul. Perhaps she hums softly, a tune passed down through generations, while the children wait, noses twitching at the tantalizing aroma. This was quick, affordable, and patriotic, a dish built not only to fill bellies, but to bolster spirits. Each golden-tipped layer was an act of love, a nod to the collective sacrifice, proof that kitchens on the home front were battlegrounds of creativity, stretching every ingredient, and in doing so, building a nation, one steaming, fragrant bite at a time. Eggless chocolate cake. Eggless chocolate cake was nothing short of a wartime miracle, a small alchemy that transformed scarcity into indulgence. More than a dessert, it was a secret weapon against the longing for sweetness, a triumph of chemistry over rationing. You measure cocoa carefully, sift flour with precision, and add a dash of vinegar to meet baking soda, watching the fizzing reaction as if it were fireworks behind the kitchen curtain. The air fills with the bittersweet scent of chocolate, tangy with vinegar and earthy with cocoa dust, and you feel the thrill of creation that this humble batter without butter or eggs will rise, will delight, will momentarily lift hearts heavier than any ration card. During the 1940s, eggs were precious and sugar ration, and yet your ingenuity demanded a cake. You mix the dry ingredients with water and a hint of oil, and as the batter comes together, it's thick and glossy, promising richness despite the meager pantry. Pouring it into a tin, you smooth the top, imagining the pale yet promising crust that will form in the oven. The room grows warm with the heat of baking, the aroma curling around the corners of the kitchen, drawing children like a siren call. You tap the top and hear the gentle spring, the sound of hope in the shape of a cake. When it finally emerges, the surface is a deep mahogany, slightly cracked, a crown of wartime ingenuity. The human element is inseparable from this cake. You can picture the mother or grandmother, careful and deliberate, coaxing sweetness from scarcity, humming a tune she learned from her own mother. She slices a piece, and the crumb is tender, moist, and surprisingly airy, the flavor deep and satisfying, a triumph of make do and mend. Each bite melts into the memory of wartime kitchens filled with resilience, whispered conversations, and quiet pride. It was quick, affordable, and patriotic. A simple act of baking became an assertion that joy could exist even in ration times, that the family could gather, smile, and savor. Every slice was a small victory, a celebration of kitchen commandos who built a nation one imaginative bite at a time. Carrot cookies. Carrot cookies were tiny parcels of comfort in a world rationed and restrained. More than mere biscuits, these sweet morsels were little acts of rebellion against scarcity. A way to transform humble roots into joy. You grate the bright orange carrots, watching the strands shimmer like sunlight, caught in a morning dew, and mix them with golden syrup, a precious sticky treasure that stretches sweetness further than sugar ever could. As you stir, the warm earthy scent of carrots rises, mingling with the rich syrupy aroma, promising the comfort of home in every bite. In the wartime kitchen, eggs were often unavailable, and sugar carefully measured by ration. Yet here you are, coaxing a chewy, fragrant cookie from what seems like nothing. Flour and a pinch of salt are added, a dusting of spice perhaps if you're lucky, and you fold the mixture gently, hearing the faint, soft swish of the wooden spoon. You scoop little rounds onto the tray, careful to space them just so, imagining the golden brown crowns that will form in the oven. The kitchen warms as they bake, and soon the air is filled with a rich, caramelized sweetness, a quiet defiance against the hardships beyond the kitchen window. The human story is woven into every cookie. You can see your grandmother, methodical and tender, letting the children sneak tastes of carrot shreds before they reach the tray, whispering encouragements, teaching patience and gratitude at the same time. When they finally cool, the cookies are a tender, slightly sticky delight. Earthy sweetness of the carrots, deep warmth from the syrup, and a subtle crisp along the edges. Each bite is a quiet reminder that ingenuity and love can turn the simplest ingredients into sustenance for the spirit. These carrot cookies were quick, affordable, and patriotic. They were edible symbols of resilience, each small mouthful a taste of ingenuity and devotion for the war effort, a testament to kitchen commandos who built a nation one clever recipe at a time. Mock Apricot Tart. The mock apricot tart was a triumph of imagination over scarcity, a little wink to exotic indulgence in a world of rationing. More than just a pastry, it was a declaration that even when apricots were a dream, the spirit of sweetness could not be denied. You mash the humble carrots until they're soft, their orange gleam catching the light like sunbeams trapped in a saucepan, and fold in a hint of flavoring, perhaps a splash of essence, a pinch of sugar if you're lucky. As you stir, the kitchen fills with a gentle, earthy perfume, earthy yet bright, teasing your senses with the promise of something almost luxurious. In those days, pastry was precious. Butter and lard measured in careful grams, flour rationed like gold. You roll the dough, hearing the soft crackle as it yields beneath your rolling pin. The flour dusting your fingertips, your apron, even the counter. You spoon the carrot, filling into the delicate crust, careful not to spill a single precious drop. The tart goes into the oven, and the aroma transforms the room. A warm, sweet, almost fruity perfume, mingling with the subtle, toasty scent of baking pastry. You can't help but tiptoe to the oven, peeking at the golden edges that rise slowly, like the hope of small comforts returning to a war-weary household. And then there is the moment of eating. You bite into the tart and are rewarded with a symphony of textures, the crisp, tender crust giving way to the soft, subtly sweet carrot filling that whispers of apricot dreams. It is a small rebellion against deprivation, a whisper of ingenuity and care baked into every mouthful. The mock apricot tart was quick, affordable, and patriotic. It was an edible testament to kitchen commandos, to those who stretched carrots into fruit, rationed butter into gold, and built a nation one clever tart at a time. I can still picture my grandmother slicing it carefully, sharing portions with a nod to resourcefulness, her eyes twinkling as if to say, we may be rationed, but we are never without hope. This tart, humble yet triumphant, was comfort, creativity, and courage all on a plate. Bread pudding. Bread pudding was more than a dessert. It was resurrection on a plate, a gentle alchemy that turned yesterday's crusts into today's comfort. More than just stale bread, it was hope, salvaged and sweetened for the war effort. You tear the bread into uneven chunks, hearing the soft, hollow crunch as it breaks, the texture dry yet full of potential. Into a bowl, you pour milk, warm and creamy, letting it seep slowly into the ragged pieces, the air thick with a soft, milky scent that promises tenderness, a sprinkle of sugar, a few raisins if fortune favors you, and suddenly this humble mix feels almost luxurious, like a small victory over rationing and scarcity. During the war, every crumb mattered. You watch as the milk is absorbed, the sugar dissolving into the spongy bread, and you can almost hear the echoes of kitchens past, the clatter of spoons against bowls, the sizzle of ingenuity in the pan, nutmeg or a whisper of cinnamon, if you had it, is dusted across the top, perfuming the air with warmth, a fragrant invitation to gather around the table. You scrape the mixture into a baking dish, smoothing it carefully, knowing that patience is the final ingredient. As it bakes, the kitchen fills with a golden scent, a sweet, toasty aroma that wraps around you like a blanket, the edges browning gently, promising crisp corners that yield the soft, custardy centers. And then you eat it. You feel the contrast of textures, the tender, spongy bread soaked in sweetened milk, the raisins bursting like tiny treasures of flavor, the caramelized crust at the edges crackling gently under your teeth. It is simple, unpretentious, yet profound proof that even in scarcity, warmth and nourishment could be stretched and shared. Bread pudding was quick, affordable, and patriotic. It was an act of love baked into every bite, a testament to the kitchen commandos who built a nation one meal at a time. I can still see my grandmother carefully slicing her portion, smiling at each child's eager eyes, knowing that even a rationed dessert could be an edible promise of comfort, ingenuity, and resilience. In those modest squares of pudding, you taste resourcefulness, hope, and the quiet triumph of making do. Dripping on bread. Dripping on bread was no mere breakfast. It was survival plated and spread thin. A small slice of comfort in a world tightened by rationing. Imagine the precious fat, rendered slowly over the stove, pooling golden and shimmering in a tin. You lift your knife, feeling the slight resistance as you spread it carefully over a slice of bread, still warm from the oven. The sizzle whispers faintly, A reminder that even the simplest things can bring satisfaction. The aroma is earthy, rich, and primal. A scent that clings to your fingers and lingers in the air like a promise of sustenance. In wartime kitchens, every scrap mattered. Meat was scarce, butter was rationed, and yet the drippings saved from yesterday's roast became both fuel and flavor. You watch as the fat melts into the porous surface of the bread, darkening the crumb with a glossy sheen. Can you imagine, as children peeked hungrily over your shoulder, the pride and relief in offering them this humble feast? It was quick, affordable, and patriotic. Each bite was an act of care, a silent declaration that ingenuity could triumph over shortage. You sprinkle a pinch of salt if there is any to spare, and suddenly the flavor sharpens, cutting through the richness with a satisfying tang. And then you taste it. The crunch of toasted edges gives way to a creamy, warm center, the fat coating your tongue with a slow, lingering richness. You feel the energy seep in, the way a simple spread could sustain and comfort simultaneously. Dripping on bread was a tribute to kitchen commandos everywhere. Those mothers and grandmothers who stretched scraps into meals that fed bodies and spirits alike. I can still picture my grandmother, carefully rationing a spoonful of fat for each child, her hands steady, her eyes warm, teaching us that even scarcity could be transformed into care, even plain bread into a treasure. Each slice whispered stories of resilience, of small triumphs over hardship, and of love rendered in the simplest, most golden of forms. Homemade margarine. Homemade margarine was not just a butter substitute, it was a small miracle born of rationing and resourcefulness. You can picture it clearly, a simple bowl, pale and unassuming, filled with vegetable oil and powdered milk, waiting for your hands to transform it into something creamy and rich. As you begin to whip it, the mixture thickens slowly, resisting at first, then yielding like the soft embrace of a well-worn blanket. There's a faint scent of sweetness in the air, a whisper of vanilla, if you're lucky, mingling with the subtle tang of salt. The golden hue grows brighter as you fold and beat, and somehow in this humble kitchen you are creating luxury from scarcity. During the war, butter was a treasure rationed in tiny amounts reserved for special occasions. Kitchens everywhere became arenas of ingenuity. You measure with care because every pinch of powdered milk, every tablespoon of oil, is precious. You beat with your forearms aching and your heart full, knowing that this pale, yielding spread will flavor bread, enrich a pudding, or melt over hot potatoes. Can you see the pride that blooms when you smear it over a steaming slice of loaf bread? The texture creamy, the taste comforting, almost indulgent in its simplicity? This wasn't just margarine, it was sustenance, dignity, and a quiet act of defiance against scarcity. And then comes the taste, the soft, yielding richness on your tongue, a whisper of sweetness and warmth. It lacks the full decadence of butter, yet it satisfies in ways that matter, turning a simple meal into something nourishing and sustaining. I can still see my grandmother, flour-dusted hands hovering over the bowl, eyes gleaming as she explained to me how to fold the mixture just so, how to make it work for the family. Each spoonful was an act of care, each pat on bread a promise that even in the leanest of times, love and creativity could fill the table. For the war effort, this margarine did more than replace butter. It built morale, stretched provisions, and fortified the spirit of a nation, one creamy golden dollop at a time. Dried egg omelet. The dried egg omelet was a quiet miracle of wartime kitchens, a humble attempt to reclaim normalcy when fresh eggs were rationed to the point of rarity. You open the tin of powdered eggs, the faint, sweet scent rising like a whisper from the past, and you measure carefully, knowing that every teaspoon counts. As you pour warm water over the powder, it swells and thickens, a pale custard that trembles in your hands. There's something almost sacred in the transformation, the alchemy of powder to life, of scarcity to sustenance. In that moment, you are both chemist and cook, coaxing nourishment from the barest of ingredients. Eggs were a luxury, a golden symbol of home, and powdered eggs were the compromise, functional, frugal, and strangely comforting. You beat the mixture, your arm rising and falling in rhythm with the sizzling margarine in the pan. You can hear it immediately. A soft hiss, a gentle crackle as the pale custard spreads and firms. Slowly, golden edges curl upward and the omelet takes shape. Still humble, still unassuming, but promising warmth, protein, and a reminder of simpler breakfasts before rationing became the rule. Can you feel the anticipation as you tip the pan, sliding the omelet gently onto a plate, the soft steam curling up to meet you, fragrant and modestly sweet? The first bite is an exercise in gratitude. The texture is tender, almost spongy, carrying the faint nuttiness of powdered milk and the richness of the fat you've salvaged for cooking. Each mouthful is a reminder of ingenuity, of families who made do with less, but never lessened their love or their care. I can still picture my grandmother, glasses perched at the tip of her nose, guiding my small hands as we beat and poured, teaching patience and resourcefulness with every stir. In that humble omelet, there is resilience, there is pride, there is the quiet dignity of the home front. For the war effort, it was not just sustenance, it was an edible declaration that life, flavor, and comfort could persist. Even in lean times, every forkful tells the story of a nation stretched thin but refusing to break, a kitchen transformed into a haven where care, creativity, and courage melted together with the simplest of eggs. Wartime coffee substitute. More than just a morning ritual, the wartime coffee substitute was a small act of defiance, a bitter, roasted comfort in cups that were never quite what you remembered. You crush the roasted barley between your fingers, inhaling the deep, earthy aroma that drifts like smoke from a distant hearth. A whisper of chicory, perhaps even a hint of dandelion root, mingles with it, and suddenly your modest kitchen is perfumed with the illusion of luxury. Can you taste it already? That first sip, dark and a little acrid, carries the echo of mornings before rationing, the warmth of hands cupping a mug while the world outside was sharp and uncertain. Coffee itself was a treasure reserved for the fortunate few. Yet necessity breeds ingenuity. You grind, you steep, you strain. Your humble brew thickens and darkens, releasing a scent that is part comfort, part reminder of restraint. The liquid shimmers with a rich brown depth, promising energy, alertness, and a fleeting escape. And as you pour it into chipped enamel mugs, the steam curls and dances like morning fog over a victory garden, filling the room with the scent of hope and survival. It is bitter, yes, but not without its charm. A reminder that even substitutes can be sustaining, that even scarcity can feel like abundance when approached with care. I can still picture my grandmother, thin arms dusted with flour, setting the pot on the stove while the children hovered nearby, noses twitching at the roasting aroma. She would add a spoonful of sugar, a splash of milk saved from rationing, and serve it with a quiet smile. For the war effort, for the sake of a small indulgence that bolstered morale, she transformed dried roots and grains into something almost magical. Each sip is a testament to cleverness, to resilience, to the ingenuity of kitchen commandos, who could conjure warmth from the simplest ingredients. Drinking it, you feel connected to every family who made do, to the whispered jokes over breakfast tables, the morning hush before chores and air raid drills. This wasn't just a coffee substitute, it was an edible declaration that life, flavor, and dignity could persist even when the world demanded sacrifice. National Lemonade. More than a mere drink, National Lemonade was a sharp sip of patriotism, a sugarless tribute to ingenuity in the face of scarcity. You squeeze the lemons, the bright sunlit yellow, yielding a tang that stings your fingers and curls the corners of your nose. Into the tart acidic pool, you drop a few saccharine tablets, each fizzing softly like a miniature celebration of ration sweetness. Can you hear it? The fizzing whispers of small rebellion against austerity. It may not be the sweet, syrupy lemonade you once knew, but it is refreshment forged from necessity, a tangy, citrusy lifeline in the thick of wartime living. Sugar was a treasure, a rationed luxury hoarded in tiny cupboards and measured by careful hands, and yet you could not let thirst or morale go unmet. So you adapt and you stir the mixture, the water catching the sunlight and gleaming like liquid gold in your glass. Your fingers sticky from the zest and juice that sprays lightly as you squeeze. The scent of lemon curls through the air, tart and sharp, cutting through the heaviness of boiled potatoes and the lingering aroma of yesterday's bread. One sip and your tongue puckers. Bittersweet, acidic, comforting, a contradiction that somehow tastes of home and resilience all at once. I can still see my mother bent over the enamel jug, her hands dusted with lemon pulp and flour from the morning's bread, serving this bright liquid with a knowing smile. It was quick, economical, and patriotic. For the war effort, it quenched thirst and lifted spirits, a simple act of love in a world of ration books and blackouts. Children would gather, mugs in hand, their eyes bright with anticipation, while the elders sipped and nodded approvingly at the cleverness of kitchen commandos who could coax flavor and sweetness from the most austere ingredients. You drink it and feel a connection to every family who stretched a lemon, measured a tablet, and made do with what they had, turning scarcity into something sparkling, something alive, something shared. National Lemonade was not just refreshment. It was a distilled moment of ingenuity, a toast to endurance, a sip of the nation's spirit in the smallest, sharpest of glasses. As you set down your spoon, wipe your hands on a worn tea towel, and look around the kitchen, it becomes clear that these recipes are not merely food, they are echoes. Each bite, each scent, each sizzle carries with it a story of ingenuity and sacrifice, of mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, who turned scarcity into sustenance and necessity into nourishment for body and spirit. Can you imagine the courage it took to stretch a single carrot into a cake, or to make bread that fed a family for days, or to coax a hint of sweetness from a saccharin tablet when sugar was a dream? These were acts of quiet heroism, edible weapons wielded in kitchens across the nation, each one a small defiance against the hardships of war, each one a gesture of care and love. You realize, too, that the rhythm of those kitchens, the clatter of pots, the hiss of frying, the aroma of vegetables roasting, the gentle thump of bread dough being kneaded, was the heartbeat of a nation at work. Every recipe here, from the humble Cabbage Hotpot to the imaginative mock apricot tart, speaks of resourcefulness, of the courage to make do and mend, and of a generation who understood that feeding a family was a service to something larger than themselves. The kitchens of the home front were battlefields in their own right, where victory was measured not in medals but in full bellies, in smiles at the dinner table, in the knowledge that every ration had been wisely spent, every scrap had been cherished. And now, as you read these recipes, as you imagine the golden crusts, the fragrant steam rising from pots, the tang of national lemonade on your tongue, you begin to see the true flavor of history. It is not bitter, nor sweet, nor savory alone. It is resilience. It is creativity in the face of limitation. It is love measured in tablespoons, courage weighed in ounces, and pride baked into every crumb. These dishes were born of necessity, yes, but they became more than survival. They became tradition, ritual, and memory. They remind you that food can carry stories, that a simple carrot cake can speak of a mother's devotion, and that a jug of wartime coffee substitute can honor the ingenuity of a community united by purpose. So when you recreate these recipes, when you fold a carrot into dough, whisk a dried egg into batter, or sip a tart lemonade, remember that you are not just tasting food, you are tasting history. You are tasting the determination of a generation that built a nation in kitchens, that nourished hope one ration stamp at a time, that left a legacy of resourcefulness, courage, and love. These are more than meals, they are the flavor of victory, the scent of perseverance, the heartbeat of a people who refuse to yield. And in honoring them, in sharing these recipes, you honor not only the food, but the indomitable spirit that created it. So there you have it, 25 recipes that are more than food. Each carrot fritter, cabbage hotpot, and wartime cake is a story of courage, creativity, and love, forged in kitchens across the home front. Can you taste the resilience in every bite? Smell the hope in every simmering pot? These dishes fed a nation, built a legacy, and carried the heartbeat of a generation that refused to give up. If these stories moved you, if these flavors spoke to your soul, follow our channel, because the history of taste is alive and there's so much more waiting for you to discover. While soldiers fought on the front lines, another battle was waged at home. Inside the kitchen, with ration books instead of rifles, families stretched every crumb, turned scraps into suppers, and made victory gardens grow where luxuries once stood. Every meal was more than food. It was sacrifice, ingenuity, and hope served on a plate. These are 25 forgotten recipes that built a nation, one humble bite at a time.